Hey guys, and welcome once again. When people think about powerful Greek city-states, they just stop at Sparta and Athens. However, as it turns out, Thebes, for a good 20 or so years, used to have its own hegemony over the land, and even beat the Spartans several times. Thebes is arguably the city-state with the most underrated history and legacy over ancient Greece. Let's get into it. Thebes, just like Athens, was founded by the Mycenaeans in the 12th century BC. It was situated in Boeotia, right at its center. In its first few centuries of existence, Thebes had an oligarchic government. This will change, but we will get to that. While it was a great location for trade and all, it was not the easiest position to defend. In fact, it was hit hard by the Dorian invasions and went through a rough period during the Dark Ages. Thebes would be able to get out of this depression only in 506 BC. Well, they might have recovered a bit sooner, but this was the first time in years they had a diplomatic dispute. Thebes wanted a small village called Plataea to be added to their territory. The problem was that also Athens was claiming it, and this led to a very small conflict between the two. It was not much objectively, but it was Thebes' first time, so it's worth remembering. This was just the beginning of a long rivalry between the two cities that lasted for most of their existence, aside for a few exceptions. Due to this rivalry, Thebes allied with the Persians in 480 BC. This action branded Thebes as traitors for a very long time. When the war was over, Athens and its allies sieged Thebes and killed its leaders, though the people were not harmed, I guess to avoid future conflicts. During the Athenian Golden Age, Athens and its allies did their best to undermine Thebes and managed to isolate them for many years diplomatically. However, in 457, the Spartans approached the Thebans in order to create a strong alliance against the Athenians. Thebes accepted the alliance and Sparta helped them expand. In exchange for their aid, Thebes helped Sparta fight against Athens in both Peloponnesian Wars, where they expanded even more. Remember the village of Plataea? Well, they finally managed to take it over, but most people had fled to Attica, so they burned down the place and built a temple dedicated to Hera in its place. In 379, a new democratic government was placed under Pelopidas and Epaminondas. They were two great generals who are credited for Thebes' golden age, which will come in a few years. Thebes developed a new military force called the Sacred Order, a new type of unit whose training and equipment rivaled the one of a Spartan hoplite. At the end of the Peloponnesian Wars, the Thebans were dissatisfied with the hegemonic policy by Sparta and joined the anti-Spartan coalition. Then, together with its allies, started the Corinthian War against Sparta. During this war, the Thebans defeated the Spartans at the Battle of Haliartos in 395 BC, though unfortunately they were defeated by them 1 year later in the Battle of Coronia. Thebes had to give up many of its holdings, including Plataea, which was rebuilt by the Athenians. A new puppet tyrant called Leontiades was placed by Sparta, but he was quickly overthrown and democracy was re-established. It was at this point that Thebes reached the breaking point and the desire for revenge became its driving force. In 373, Thebes took back Plataea from Athens, and in 371 they fought back against Sparta at the Battle of Leuctra, where Sparta lost painfully. This date is considered the time when Sparta really began to fall and Thebes began its hegemony in Greece. Thebes conquered the northern Peloponnesus and Messenia, freeing a lot of Sparta's slaves. Then it created the Arcadian League, a new union of anti-Spartan city-states right at their doorstep. They also expanded north, where they not only captured some territory under the kingdom of Macedon, but also kept Phillip II as prisoner. Philip at the time was just a kid and learned a lot from Thebans. He would use their military tactics and methods of governance during his campaigns a few decades later, but I have already talked about it in my Macedonian video. The Thebans, however, ended up being too ambitious. Pelopidas died in 364 during a campaign up north. Meanwhile, the king of Sparta, Agesilaus, assembled a Peloponnesian army composed of the cities that could not stand the Theban hegemony, and at the Battle of Mantinea in 362 he managed to kill Epaminondas, but not to defeat him, and his dream of restoring Spartan power failed. For both armies it was a Pyrrhic victory. Both Sparta and Thebes lacked the men and resources to fight further, but also Thebes had lost its two best generals. Thebes tried to maintain its power with diplomacy and its influence. However, after the Third Sacred War and other small-scale conflicts, it became clear that Macedon was now the strongest player in Greece. Therefore, the Theban hegemony ended with the decisive victory by the Macedonians at the Battle of Chaeronea in 338 BC. When Phillip conquered the city, it mostly left it alone, because he grew fond of the place when he was a hostage. Though when he died, the Thebans revolted, and Alexander the Great, now in charge, not only took down the revolt, but also destroyed the city in 335 BC. Alexander was remorseful afterwards, but the damage had already been done, and for the longest time Thebes had become the shadow of its former self. That doesn't mean it was its end. In 316 BC, Cassander rebuilt the city, and while it was not the same, Thebes was now back in game. As the Romans became more and more of a threat, Thebes joined the Aetolian Confederation, where it had a significant role, both economically and militarily. However, this did not stop the Roman general Sulla from conquering Thebes in 87 BC. His soldiers looted the city, putting an end to the legacy of this great Greek city-state. Do not be hasty though. Theban history during medieval times is also quite interesting. Under the Byzantines, thanks to its connections to the Silk Road, it became the biggest silk producer in Europe. Theban silk was highly praised above all others during this period, both for its quality and its excellent reputation. This made its citizens extremely wealthy, and even when it attracted some nasty invaders, they almost always managed to get themselves back on their feet, regardless of who was running the place. To this day, Thebes has a vibrant economy, both on agriculture, industry and tourism. Guess some things never change. I guess also that's all I have. I'm glad you watched all the way through. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.